Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we are back on the air for the program Man and Nature, produced by Batrisha Afrina. For the next half an hour, you will be joining me, Sheikh Muhammad Saifuddin and Sheikh Muhammad Saleh, and a special guest panelist who will be sharing his expertise and views on the chosen topic for this week. The overarching theme for this season's Man and Nature is biodiversity. In line with this, we have an interesting topic to share in this week's edition of Man and Nature. The topic for discussion this week is striving for sustainable balance, biofuels and biodiversity. And to further explain this topic, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to introduce Associate Professor Dr. Zul Ilham bin Zulkifli Lubis, Deputy Dean, Research, Faculty of Science, University Malaya. Assalamualaikum Dr. Zul and welcome to Man and Nature.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh, Dr. Sheikh. Thank you for having me here today.
Happy to have you back to the program. Okay, Dr. Zul, let's start off our discussion. Perhaps I think I would like to start with this statement. We know that biofuels are important, but they can also be somewhat controversial. So today we are actually tackling a very complex yet crucial topic, biofuels and how they relate to biodiversity. Now, the idea of biofuels, that is fuels derived from plants and other organic materials, sounds great for the environment. Now, can you explain what exactly are biofuels? I know many people have heard about biofuels but may not be too sure what they are, and how do they work, and are they really a viable alternative to fossil fuel?
Thank you, Dr. Sheikh. So, in order for me to explain what biofuels are, I believe that most of us have heard about biofuels previously. However, I think it is better for me to reiterate again what biofuels are. So, if we wonder what biofuels are, basically we could say that instead of filling up your car with fossil fuel, petroleum, that you can get from the gas station, which take millions of years to form underground, so you could be using fuel made from plants or even leftover cooking oil. So that's the basic idea behind biofuels, where we can use leftover cooking oil, recycled cooking oil, or fuel made from plants instead of fossil fuels to be filled into your cars. So they are essentially fuels that are made from living things, or what we call as biomass, and it takes shorter time frame to be formed in comparison to the conventional fossil fuel. We are talking about producing fuel from crops like corns, sugarcane, palm oil, algae, and even use cooking oil that you have just used in your homes. The biomass was then processed into liquid fuels that can power our cars, trucks, or even heat our home if we need heaters. There are a few reasons why biofuels getting a lot of attention. First, it is because it is renewable. We can keep on planting new crops or finding new sources of biomass to make more biofuel instead of using the existing conventional fossil fuel that, as for now, we didn't really know how much longer left in the reservoir. Think of it like this. You take in oxygen. We, human, take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide when we breathe. Plant do the opposite way. It consume carbon dioxide and release oxygen. So, when a plant is used to produce biofuel, then the fuel is burned, we can say that the amount of carbon dioxide released from the fuel is roughly equal to the amount that the plant absorbed while growing, making it kind of carbon neutral and attractive to all of us. About your question about how do they work, I could give two examples of biofuels: biodiesel and ethanol. For ethanol, in order to produce it, we need sugars from plant, fermented it, and it is being used as fuel for petrol cars, equivalent to petrol car, and we could use it 100% or in mixture with the normal petroleum that we fill into our cars. For biodiesel, on the other hand, we need a process, a chemical process called trans-esterification to convert this oil into biodiesel, which can be filled into our trucks or cars that use diesel fuel. It could also be used in blends. For example, if we use 10% biodiesel in a mixture of 90% of diesel, we call it B10. If we mix 20% of biodiesel, then it's gonna be B20. That's how the term being used in order to describe the blends of biodiesel inside tanks. Whether they are really a viable alternative to fossil fuel, Dr. Sheh, I could say it is not quite the perfect solution. However, it is a promising alternative. Of course, we have some challenges that we will discuss today, such as land use, water usage, emission, and also the relationship with biodiversity.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Zul, for the explanation regarding what biofuels are. You actually mentioned that biofuels can be obtained from plants, and of course this has raised the concern that biofuel production may displace food crops necessary for food and feed, and also harming biodiversity. So can you elaborate on this challenge and how can we overcome them?
Absolutely, Dr. Sheh. Of course, there are significant challenges associated with biofuel production as well as usage. So I could describe or explain two challenges today. The first one, in relation to food versus fuel that you mentioned before. I've mentioned just now that biofuels could be produced from crops such as corn, palm oil, soybean, which are all edible oil, cooking oils that we can use daily. So the challenge is food versus fuel, where large-scale biofuel production can compete with land needed to grow food. Imagine a scenario where cornfield or our palm oil field, when we drive back to Hari Raya, we can see all along the highway, right? We have palm oil plantation. If we have to convert all those to plant palm oil in order to produce biodiesel for cars, this can lead to competition and food price hike and even shortage, right? But then there are solutions to this, where these crops that are being used for biofuels, edible crops, food crops, are being called as first generation biofuels. Nowadays, we already have 3 generations of biofuels, Dr. Sheh. So the first one are all being produced by food crops, like I've mentioned before. The second generation biodiesel, on the other hand, use waste or recycle biomass. For example, recycle cooking oil, and it also use biomass residues and non-edible crops such as jatropha and other crops that are also producing oil but not being utilized for cooking oil. On the other hand, the other challenge is biodiversity. Another concern is that we will have to plant crops in order to produce biofuels, monocrops, singular species of crops, and replacing the areas of rainforest, and it could disrupt ecosystem and lead to loss of plant and animal species. This is a major concern, but then it could have a cascading effect to all other things in the ecosystem. However, there are solutions to this, where we don't have to focus on, like I've mentioned before, food crops. We can focus on utilizing resources such as wood waste, agricultural residues, or even algae, right? This could reduce the competition with food product and also reduces the impact towards the environment. So, in addition to that, Dr. Sheh, we also have improved biofuel production method. where we could use less land and water, or even use genetically modified crops that grow faster and utilizes fewer resources in order to produce the same amount of biofuel to fuel our transportation fleet. Uh, and instead of just relying on a few crops monoculture, researchers are also exploring wider range of potential biofuel resources. So this could hopefully help the impact and reduces pressure on any single ecosystem.
Right, Dr. Zul, I would like to pick up what you said about biodiversity. Allow me to probe you further on this. How can we ensure biofuel development does not come at the expense of vital habitats and diverse species? I know you've mentioned this briefly, but perhaps you can elaborate further.
Your question, Dr. Sheikh, it actually raised a very critical point where we need to find the balance between biofuel development as well as biodiversity. So, first I will describe this in terms of how we could have strategies in order to maintain the balance. First, we could prioritize conservation. We could set aside protected areas. Some biofuel crops don't really need arable land, meaning fertile lands. So it could be planted on marginal lands or lands that you don't normally plant food crop on it, right? So we can have species that could grow in areas that are non-fertile. So there's no competition with food, and we could actually utilize the land that are not being used. We will not touch any ecologically sensitive areas such as rainforests, wetlands, and also involve coral reef and stuff, right? So we need to have habitat corridors too when developing biofuel plantation. For example, we need to have corridors of natural vegetation so that it would not fragment the habitats that live around it, so that it will still allow animal to move freely between areas. But in IKIM, I would like to emphasize that we need to find the balance. Balance, I believe in Islam we describe it by using wasatiyah, Dr. Sheikh. So we need to find a sustainable feedstock that could help us produce biofuel, but on the same time doesn't jeopardize biodiversity, and it is available, not something that we need to find something new or something far ahead that we could not reach.
Right. I am very much interested when you mention the word balance. How can large-scale biofuel production coexist with healthy biodiversity ecosystems?
So, Dr. Syed, I mentioned the concept of moderation and balance, right? In Islam, the Islamic concept of wasatiyah can be a really strong guiding principle in order for us to develop this large-scale biodiesel power plant. So, the challenge ahead is for us to shift towards sustainability. So, we need to move from the current focus on producing biofuels from food crop into non-food sources, utilizing waste and materials as well as agricultural residues. Malaysia and the other Southeast Asian countries are being blessed with 55% more biomass than other parts like the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere, because we are in the tropical region. So it is crucial for us to use these abundant resources, which could also address the sustainability concern towards using food crops, competition with food and stuff. In addition to that, I believe we should also have public awareness, to raise public awareness about the benefit of utilizing sustainable biofuel as an alternative fuel towards fossil fuel, and encourage wider acceptance and support from the industry.
Since biofuel production is very important, I'm sure that we need policies. So, what role does government policy play in promoting sustainable biofuels?
Dr. Sheikh, in Malaysia, we already launched a policy called National Biofuel Policy. And recently, we launched a nationwide mandatory of using 20% palm-based biodiesel. I'm talking about biodiesel because we have a lot of palm oil in our country, right? So we have launched this nationwide mandatory 20%, B20 being used, but then not implemented nationwide. It is only in some areas in Langkawi and Labuan. As during those time, it was in 2020 during the COVID pandemic, and later on we have other multiple changes in recent years that doesn't really accelerate the process. However, the current Malaysian biodiesel production could rise to 1.8 million metric ton in 2024 if we have this mandate, right? However, having said that, we should also see where Malaysia is positioned among the Southeast Asian countries. In Southeast Asian country, Indonesia is the country with the most established biodiesel program, where currently it mandated, meaning it enforced a B30 mandate, which all the diesel being sold in Indonesia must contain minimum 30% of biodiesel blend. So it is followed by countries like us. So we are not far behind. Malaysia and Thailand, we have this B10 since 2019 to be mixed in biodiesel. But the industry are waiting for us to move ahead towards B20, higher percentage of Malaysia. And I believe in terms of policy, we could, Malaysia could work on our strength. The first one is we are major palm oil producer, meaning as world's first and sometimes second largest palm oil producer, Malaysia has readily available source of raw material for biodiesel production. Not to mention using the palm oil that could be used for cooking oil, but the residues, palm kernel oil, the rest of the oils from other parts of palm oil that could be used. We could also enhance the existing biodiesel capacity because the country has already numbers of operational plants, so it could be enhanced. And government will also have to ensure national biofuel policy that has been introduced, being implemented, and to encourage 3 A's. The first one is the acceptability of the public and the industry, the affordability, and the third one is accessibility towards biofuel. If we can focus on these 3 A's, then it could help the biofuel industry to face all the challenges and hurdles that are currently faced.
Right, Zul, interesting that you mentioned about the 3 A's. I'm just wondering, what is the acceptability rate of biofuel amongst the Malaysian public?
We haven't have a really concrete survey on whether the acceptance specifically towards biofuel, but we have acceptance of youth towards renewable energy, which include other kinds of renewable energy, solar, wind, biomass. So biofuels falls into biomass, which is one of renewable energy. It could be said that the young people from 19 years old to 40 years old, more than 55% of them really would like to use biofuels, but they don't really have the access. So the acceptability is there, but it's hard to be found, to be used. So we have the acceptability rate high, more than 55%. In elder generation, however, it is a little bit lower at 35%. But I see that with the movement towards environmental concern, those figures will increase, right? So we have to look into the affordability in order to make it affordable for everyone.
Is it affordable, by the way?
Uh, for now, the process is costly in comparison to the conventional fuel.
Okay.
But with the subsidy that we currently have, it could be lowered into affordable rate. However, in the future, as all of the technology phases, we could see that we could foresee that it could be more affordable in the future.
And it will be more competitive in the market, I suppose. Dr. Zul, what are some of the challenges that we face in achieving a future powered by sustainable biofuels?
So, the challenges, there are many, Dr. Sheikh, but we could discuss a bit today. The first one is low biofuel consumption. Again, if people have doubt in order to put in plant oil into their tanks, so they would, I think, because for all this while, we have filled our car tanks with fossil fuel, right? So it is a change towards something that could give you impact towards the engine performance and stuff, right? But then there are research showing that if being used in blends, it doesn't need any engine modification, so it could still produce the same performance with lower emission in comparison to fossil fuel. So I believe that the part of educating the masses is important in order for all the public to understand that if we use biofuel for our cars, it won't affect the performance and the engine protection. However, we also need to convince the industry to ensure that the car warranty and the service being provided could actually cater the biofuel usage in our cars. Another thing is the economic factors, where fluctuation in resources, for example, if we are going to use palm oil, then petroleum prices can affect the economic viability of biofuel in no time. Most of the time, biofuel will be very, very popular when the price of petroleum is skyrocket high. Then only people start using, try to find resources in order to fill biofuel. Like now, when the price is petroleum price is stable, nobody really discuss about biofuel and didn't really look into it. The other thing is that we have to shift the focus on first generation biofuel, which all of us know could affect biodiversity because of its nature being planted in monoculture, vast land area, vast fertilizer and water being used. So instead, we should focus on the other generation of biofuel, the advanced generation of biofuel, exploring more sustainable sources that could address all the environmental concern, lowering the usage of water, not using fertile land that could be used for better purposes such as food production, and on the other hand, still we could address the environmental concern and reduce the emission. So it's the way for us to find the balance, to be wasatiyah in our approach, so that biofuel development could also utilize the agricultural residues and resources that Malaysia have, as well as protecting our beautiful biodiversity and green areas in our country.
Dr. Zul, I have one question that just cropped up. You've been to Japan, you've been to the United States. Comparing Malaysia to these two developed countries in terms of biofuel, how are we compared to them?
So Dr. Shi mentioned Japan and the US, right? So first I will explain about what happened in Japan. In Japan, the program has started way long ago, around 20 years back. Japan is the country where they don't really have a lot of resources. Most parts of the countries are mountainous areas, so they have to use whatever that they have in order to produce biodiesel. So, for example, in Kyoto or in each street, they will have a collection center, voluntary collection center, a house where one household will collect all the used recycled tempura oil because they cook tempura quite regular in a way. So they collect all this tempura oil, non-filtered, but then it will be collected by the municipal council, filtered and converted into biodiesel. So the household that collected all this recycled oil will receive vouchers to be used in their grocery stores to have discount in order to encourage people to participate in this collection of recycled oil. So in Japan, they didn't really focus on planting new energy crop in order to produce biofuel. They just use whatever that they have. Currently, they have residues, cooking oil residues, so they convert it into biodiesel, biofuels, and they utilize it. This is really different from the situation in the US. US, United States of America, have a very huge land area. So what they did in America is that they produce biofuels in their backyard. So there are a lot of what we could say, it's not really an industry, it's a backyard movement or backyard industry, where what they have huge agricultural residues land, so they will collect all the hay, fermented it at the back of their house with their own, we could say, makeshift, or they develop it, I mean they build it by themselves, DIY plant, in order to produce ethanol to fuel their trucks or their cars that also work in the plantation area. So it's a different movement. In the US, it is more bottom up rather than being imposed top down policy, right? So people would like to shift into biofuels because they feel they don't want to rely solely on fossil fuel. If let's say there are fluctuations or there are shortage in supply, they could always have alternatives so that their agricultural industries could move. So these are two different approaches and strategies by two different countries. So in Malaysia, we could not just adopt whatever that they are doing, but we could look into what we have. As I've mentioned before, we are major palm oil producer. So I believe that we have to look into this in order to be the source of our biofuel. Sustainability concern, of course there is. Biodiversity concern, of course we have biodiversity concern, but it shouldn't stop us from looking into this and studying into this. We should address this concern and find the balance where we can actually have biofuel production as well as protecting the environment and biodiversity.
I think you've put forward a very interesting point there in achieving balance to ensure that we have economic growth, and we also ensure that our environment is protected. Perhaps some last words from you before we conclude our program.
I believe, Dr. Sheh, that in order to find balance in development as well as protecting the environment, we need to have our public to discuss this matter so that everybody is aware of what the public needs and also what the country needs, and we can find strategies in order to approach this matter wisely. instead of just plug and play, taking up technologies from other countries and execute it here. We should build it ground up. Although it will take some time, Dr. Sheikh, but it will be more sustainable in the long run because we already address the issues like I've mentioned. The first one is accessibility, affordability, and acceptability of all. The 3 A's in order for us to see that biofuels could be viable in the near future. Thank you, Dr. Sheikh, and thank you, IKIM.
Thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Zul Ilham, for enlightening us on the topic striving for sustainable balance, biofuels and biodiversity into this edition of Man and Nature. Perhaps before we end, I'd like to share something interesting that perhaps not many people realize. If you look in the Quran, there is actually a verse that mentions about obtaining fuel and energy from plants.
Surah Yasin.
Surah Yasin, exactly. Surah Yasin, verse 80. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون, which is translated, He is the one who gives you fire from green trees, and behold, you kindle fire from them. I think this is very interesting for us to note because Quran has actually given us a signal that we can actually obtain fuel and energy from plant resources.
Green plants.
Green plants, in this case green plants. And not forgetting what you mentioned also from other bioorganisms, animals, and also algae. So I think this is a clear signal for us as a Khalifa of this planet. But at the same time, we need also to be aware of the need to ensure that what we do not harm the environment. I think that is equally important. Hence, the balance that we need to strive upon, as discussed by Dr. Zul earlier. So I hope that our discussion has been informative and beneficial to all who are listening. Do tune in again next week at the same time for another interesting topic on biodiversity. For the last 30 minutes, you have been listening to Man and Nature. I am Sheikh Muhammad Saifuddin bin Sheikh Muhammad Saleh, signing off until next week. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.